Good afternoon, everyone. Carasoft Technology would like to welcome you to our ServiceNow Federal Tech Talk, Risk, Issue, and Opportunity Management. Just to tell you a little bit about Carasoft, we are a trusted government IT solutions provider supporting the public sector organizations across federal, state, and local government agencies, including education and healthcare markets. At this time, I'd like to hand the floor over to our first presenter, Andrew Shearer. Andrew, the floor is all yours.
Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us on this Thursday before a holiday weekend. So we're really thankful and grateful that you're able to join us. My name, as Heather said, my name's Andrew Shearer. I'm a solution sales executive here at ServiceNow. And today I'm going to start and walk you through probably 4 or 5 slides, not too many, as an overview. And then we're going to turn it over to our partner from InSource to walk you through a demo. The lion's share is going to be a demo. And what we're going to talk today is our latest in our series, our Tech Talk series, and we're going to go over the risk, issue, and opportunity management, and how do we help customers with their journey in becoming RIO compliant. And so, as I mentioned, from as far as introductions are concerned, what we're going to do just to save time is before anyone from our side, one of the panelists speaks, he or she will just introduce themselves. That way we can save time and not go around the horn and introduce everybody. So with that, I do want to mention one thing, that you will be hearing my voice. I'm with ServiceNow. There'll be a couple other ServiceNow folks that you'll hear, but you're also going to be hearing from folks from a company called InSource. ServiceNow is a partner company, and we have technology partners that help us and help our customers succeed and implement ServiceNow properly and achieve all the wonderful things that ServiceNow can do. And InSource is one of the partners that I work quite a bit with inside of the DoD. And so I'm very happy and honored that they're here today with us. And Mark from InSource is going to be the one doing the demo of our solution that ties together multiple products that ServiceNow offers to go out and solve the issue of RIO compliance. So with that, I'm gonna jump into our slides. And as Heather said, just if you have questions, feel free to write them in the chat box, and we'll try to get them answered in close to real time as we can. And if we can't, we'll make sure we get you the answers in the next couple days. All right, with that, let's get cooking here. So the first slide is always our safe harbor slide. I'll vamp a little so you can read through it. Basically, what we're saying is forward-looking and can't guarantee them and all those wonderful things. But this is the obligatory safe harbor slide, and I assume everyone has read it now. All right, very good. All right, so the agenda, we're already past number 1, so we're doing great. We've already done our start and introductions, and now what I'm going to do is we're going to give a really quick basic overview of ServiceNow. If some of you aren't familiar with ServiceNow, InSource is going to do a quick slide or two on who they are. Again, just so that you know who's who in the zoo. Then I'm going to go through 1 slide of RIO and the overview, and so we can leave as much time for the actual demo, which is the exciting part, where you can see all the things we're talking about in real time. You can see them in our instance as Mark walks you through them. All right, so first, ServiceNow, who we are. Again, very briefly, large company. I think many of you have heard of ServiceNow. Last year, 2022, we had almost $7 billion in revenue, 6.891. This year, Q1 of 2023, I think we did $2 billion. So we're on a pathway to pass that $6.8 billion in revenue. That just means we're doing a lot of business with a lot of customers. Got 20,000 employees, et cetera. The 2 numbers that I like to speak to here are, number 1, we're in about 85% of Fortune 500 companies. This is a global slide, right, made by our global marketing. So it's not specific to the federal side, but I will tell you that as many of you may know, we in December of last year, so December of 22, we signed an ELA, an enterprise license agreement with the US Army. We have multiple ELAs with multiple different groups inside the Department of Defense and on the civilian side. So we're quickly becoming, a standard for the various products that ServiceNow offers. And the one big number I always point out here when it comes to ServiceNow is our renewal rate. globally, we're at about 98%, which again, just tells me that folks, once the solution is implemented, it's working the way that it should, right? And, our tagline is we make work better, the world work better for everyone. And so once our solution is in and working, folks stick with it because they really do make their lives and their work day much, much easier. So move on. This is my last slide about ServiceNow, the company. I just like to point this out because it's one of the things that really separates us from those that are in our space. I avoid using the word competition for lots of different reasons, but oftentimes the juxtaposition between how innovative we are versus other folks in our space is really glaring. As you can see, we do 2 major releases every single year. So every single year, there's 2 releases with additional functionality, additional solutions, and a more powerful solution year over year over year. If you've ever been curious what our release is and what the nomenclature means, right now we're on cities, and so it's in alphabetical order. So Orlando to Paris, OP to Q, Quebec, R to Rome. Right now, this slide is from the Q4 of 2022, so it has Utah as dots, but we are currently in the Utah release. Now, I know that's not a city. I don't think that I think our marketing team decided to go with Utah instead of a city that starts with U. So, and we're tracking, of course, to Vancouver in the fall, and then Washington in the spring of 2024. So it's constant innovation, and it really does separate ourselves from those that are also in this space. With that, Dan, if you want to just give a quick couple seconds on InSource, the next 2 slides. Dan, just tell me when to click to the next one.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Appreciate it. Yeah, and thanks for having us. My name is Dan Gale, and my role here at InSource is Chief Solutions Officer, so I head up our solutions team. We are one of the the partners that Andrew had mentioned in the ServiceNow ecosystem, and have been doing so and been in that space for just about 12 years now. We have a national footprint in terms of our, what we cover in terms of the territories and the regions. We are headquartered in Philadelphia, and we use a combination of, we can use a combination on and offshore resources if we're doing that from a delivery perspective. We are doing a fair amount of work with, as Andrew mentioned, in the Department of Defense, as well as other branches, other federal organizations as well. And we've been, like it says here, an elite partner since 2012. We have over 1,500. I think that number is getting north of like 2,000 at this point now, but we have lots of different engagements, lots of things that we implement within ServiceNow. And we also have, one of the things that we're pretty proud of is the skill bridge program, which is we basically hire and train military folks, people that are transitioning out of the military to become folks that work in the ServiceNow ecosystem. That is something that's a bit unique to InSource, and we're pretty proud of that. All right, Andrew, the next slide. And just how do we kind of cover all of this within the ServiceNow platform? We are actually organized into what we call practices that are aligned to ServiceNow product lines, right? So that, IT service management, IT operations management, strategic portfolio, IT asset, and customer service management. We have dedicated practices across the organization, as well as things like integrated risk management and GRC, which actually don't show up on the slide, but they are practices that we have, and Mark actually heads up that practice. He's going to be walking you through, he and Mike will be walking you through the solution that's a kind of a better together between strategic portfolio management and integrated risk. You can kind of see there the number of certifications that we have within the organization, things that we've done from, the number of implementations, the average tenure of all of our folks, which is actually pretty good. We keep folks, hire folks, keep folks involved within the ServiceNow ecosystem, and pretty proud of our 4.6 in terms of our customer CSAT, which is great. I think that's just a little bit about InSource, and I think at this point, Andrew, I'm going to be turning this over to Mark. Is that correct?
No, I think I've got 2 more slides.
Oh, you got a couple more? Oh, yes, right. You got
two more. I want to hear myself speak for 2 more, and then we'll turn it over to Mark. So real fast, Excellent. We'll get through these quickly. I like to show this slide. This is just a little bit on ServiceNow, right? So this is, I know it's a busy slide, kind of by design, I think. But what this just shows is it shows you all the different products and solutions that ServiceNow has, all out of the box. And what's interesting about this, what I always like to point, this is, this is the secret sauce. This is our barrier of entry. This is what's hard to replicate. And it's basically all of these products revolve around a single source of data, single data model, single architecture, single code. And so what that allows us to do is it allows you to seamlessly interconnect between multiple solutions. So for instance, I'm going to pick two at random. If I'm picking ITOM, IT operations management, and ITAM, IT asset management, those are two separate and distinct workflows, but because they are grabbing information from the same data source and because they're using the same data model, there's a seamless interconnection. And actually, we're going to see an example of that seamless interconnection today, because for us to meet the requirements of RIO and to the best way that we know how to do it is to actually integrate two standalone solutions. One is SPM, which is our strategic portfolio management, and one is our integrated risk management solution, or IRM. Now, when we show this, we're actually going to show you where one stops and one begins, but oftentimes with customers, because of our integrated solutions, it's just that, it's a solution. And an end user may not know I'm in SPM now or I'm in IRM now, right? They're all interconnected, so that it makes the experience for the end user much more positive, much more valuable, and you're bringing in multiple solutions, for the power to solve particular problems and particular issues. So again, we're going to be looking at SPM and IRM, but just know that we can sit across the entire solution and share with our multiple different workflows. So finally, RIO. This is what we all came for. And again, if you're here, you probably are familiar with what RIO is. And so with risk, issue, and opportunity, I won't go through it point by point. I think it's a 75-page plus document. But what I wanted to point out is why we're so interested in it is it's really looking at effective risk management within program constraints. So within that project management, how do we have effective risk management, and how do we allow leadership to understand and mitigate technical risk, to shape and control risk, and to anticipate possible adverse events. And most importantly, to try to do it in either real-time or near real-time environment. And talking to customers about what they're doing with RIO, oftentimes what we'll hear is they'll do a post-mortem on a program, on a project. So they finish the project, they'll stop it, and then they'll do a post-mortem to see where did risks pop up. How did they deal with those risks? How did they alleviate those risks? How can they avoid those risks in the future? Not real time. And so what we're going to try to do is do all those things, but do them in a way that you're doing them as you're working through the project, as opposed to post-mortem. And so with that, I will be quiet. I'm going to hand it over to you, Mark, if you want to share your screen and kind of start walking through the demo.
Great. Oh, I need you to stop sharing. There you go. Grab the right screen here. It's always the guessing game when you start a Zoom. All right. Again, my name is Mark Seeley. I'm the practice director for SecOps and integrated risk management for InSource. So I'm going to be walking through what you're going to see. We're going to go from SPM through IRM and back again. So what that's going to look like when we look at it, we're going to be starting out with project portfolio. We're moving into the integrated risk, and you'll notice I have arrows going back and forth because we're going to have constant communication between the two different modules. Obviously, issue management plays a big part in that. How are we resolving different things within a risk as we move forward? Then we're going to show you how does that tie into new opportunities, right? I get a risk, I see an opportunity to make things better. Typically, the stance is nowadays, oh, there's a risk, you mitigate it or accept it, and that's sort of the end, right? Sort of drops off. And there's opportunities there. There's opportunities so it doesn't come up again. How do we fix it? How do we make things better as we're moving forward? We're going to drive that into an opportunity management team or a risk management team, whoever would be assigned the role to actually cover that area. Obviously, issues come into those as well. Even if I get an opportunity off of a risk, I may see some additional issues I need to go into. Maybe certain policies at risk, or different control functions aren't out there. So sometimes we need to have an issue to address those factions. And then we're going to go circle back or write down the projects, because if I see no opportunity and we see the ability to do something with it, then we want to pursue the opportunity, get it in play, which could reach another project, right? Depending on what it is. Maybe I need a budget for it. I need personnel. So we're going to do full circle as we go through this. Okay. So let's dive in. I'm going to be going a little bit back and forth between the slides and the instance. So you'll see that. Here we are starting on the project workspace as we go through, and I'm going to hand over to Mike Gardiaz to talk about the SPM side a little bit and introduce himself.
Yeah, so good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mike Gardiaz. I'm the InSource SPM Practice Director. And what Mark is displaying here is what we call the project workspace. So for those of you who may be unfamiliar with the application, any project that is specifically assigned to you would be visible in a tile format with some high-level analytics, such as start, end date, etc. Or you could filter on all projects and have access to any and all project that is currently going on, right? If you were to select a project, the application is capable from a project perspective to provide you details, relative information, and data about the project you're managing. That is where in which you would log your risks, opportunities, and issues, etc. It has a Gantt chart capable of providing visibility into critical path, milestone tracking, cost information, benefit information, and also has a nice standardized analytics screen here that brings you to high-level information around what phase the project you're on, the status you're in, the percent complete. So for any and all projects that you might be managing, you would have the opportunity to really get a handle on, hey, what is it that I'm looking at, right? I think the next one here you're going to go to, Mark, looks like that planning console where we're talking about managing the critical path. So similar to many other applications used to manage project, any other software, you'd have the opportunity to manage dependencies, start dates, end dates, assignment to tasks, etc. Right? And then the last piece here is what we referenced earlier in terms of the status reports. So these status reports are out of the box, and what they do is they provide a streamlined consistency into which data is escalated up, right, or presented up. Here you could have your risks, your milestones, trending of your status report history, and really start, bubbling up what if and what's needed to the appropriate eyes and stakeholders to make better decisions. And of course, in addition to that, you have your standard KPI indicators, cost, schedule, budget, red, yellow, green, that enable the organization to have a consistent model of data, and data elements to report up with. Right. This detail screen, I'm sorry, Mark. Yeah, I was just going to say this detail screen, I think, is where Mark's going to be essentially managing the rest of it through. But this is what I was alluding to in the very beginning with the details and a lot of the data that it's pretty much the dashboard for a project manager to be running their individual projects. Go ahead, Mark.
Yep. No, perfect. Thanks, Mike. So this is where we're going to kick off at this point from project, and we're going to move into, and you're going to see the tie over into the integrated risk management. And you'll notice there is a process flow up here. You're going to see that repeatedly as we go through all the different functions that we discussed today: risk, issue, opportunity, and back to project. That's one thing about the ServiceNow platform. You do have a lot of standardized things, so it's easy to maneuver and understand different screens, no matter which module you're in. Gives you just that nice ease of action. But we're going to be going down here, and what I'm concerned about is risks. We're going to dive into this area here. So when I look at what we're going to tie back to, so that workflow that we were talking about, we're going to be going from step 1 into step 2, and then eventually into 2A. Okay. So when I look at the risks associated, I can add new risks at any point, but I can also edit. So when I look at the edit function, this is where I'm actually pulling in risks from the risk registry. So anything that's already been out there, because we know the same risk can apply to multiple different projects. So why are we reinventing the wheel all the time, adding a new risk? I could pull them in from the risk registry at any point, select those and bring those over. That way it's nice ease of use. But obviously if I have something new, right, we run into those new risks all the time. Every new adventure brings some new issues. So we're going to select on new today. And this is where we're going to start taking off. And now you can see I'm actually in the risk record, but I've moved into the IRM space at this point. Okay. So let's go ahead and we're going to start filling in some of the blanks. Now, there's two different ways I can do this. I can inherit information from a risk statement. This gives me different attributes that are already out there that have been developed within the business unit or organization, saying, hey, these are particular things that span across different risks. So we can go ahead and grab those risk statements across. Or I can create from scratch is what we're going to do. Go through. We don't want to take the easy route to do that. So category, I'm going to select operational is what we're tackling today. Now, you're always going to have a required entity because we need to tie it back to something. What is the target area that I'm scoping? Okay, so we're going to target accounting and finance. It could be anything. Now, an entity, depending on organization or business unit or company, that can be anywhere from a laptop computer to an airplane. Okay, so that's depending on the organization, really determines what an entity is. But really it ties back to something functional, something that requires action around it, whether it be a project. Obviously, if I'm building an airplane, there's a project involved, there's a lot of moving parts, there's a lot of risks involved, there's a lot of financials involved. So, that would be a solid entity. But inside of that, there's a lot of different, there's an engine to the airplane, right? So the engine could be its own entity. So just keep that in mind when you're going through and building some of these things out, that can go on and on. There's a lot of different registry you can take there. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and submit that. Okay, so as you can see, we've moved into that risk space. Like I said, this is where we're going to go ahead and take off, and we're going to go into the risk workspace. So we're going to get a little more dynamic with this thing. And within the risk management workspace, I can see my overall risks that are out there, any new risks that have been created. I can see my high level. Okay, I have 26 very high that I need to tackle. Obviously, if you've worked in ServiceNow at all, every one of these links, I can drill down into the actual data and get any results I need back. So I can see what these 22 different controls, these 22 different risks that don't have mitigating controls, I can drive into those. I can track different controls by testing status. Obviously, controls are very important when we get into risks. Do I have controls in place? Have the controls tests be done to roll out and make sure I'm mitigating the risk, or I just need to accept it based on that result? And then any attached issues. So now issues is a nice touch because these can go across the board. These can apply to different areas. They can be as simple as a small task, or something larger where I need to tie a budget to it, depending on what I'm doing. Issues can come off of projects, they can come off of risks, they can come off of engagements or audits and opportunities, as we'll see. So they flow across the entire platform in these different regards I'm speaking to. Okay. When we look at the tasks involved, so obviously as an individual, I need to see what I'm doing. I have different issues I need to take care of. I'm an owner of risk responses, my groups, obviously I can get into those. And then there's also issues, right? This is similar to that risk. A lot of times issues are overshadowed, but they are a big part of our day because a lot of times I can set up an issue for someone that's external to the IRM team, but I need them to actually handle a task before I can mitigate a risk at any point. So I can track those. I can look at overdue issues by priorities. What's the timelines on those, who they assign to, I can track those in. So these ones are mine. I have 2 assigned to me. So I guess I need to get to work. I can do my tracking on open remediation tasks out there, overdue remediation tasks. So if I have 115 open and 98 are due, I'm not doing too good. Somebody's gonna get mad. And then obviously I can look at trending on the performance of how we're tracking those open and closed issues. Okay. So nice trending abilities there. We're going to go into Looking at this flow here, I can see I have two different list agents here. My lists are really my favorites. So how's Mark working today? I might set up some different favorites, but so you can do that because sometimes we don't want to go through this whole lengthy list. But I'm going to dive into this risk right here. Now, I'm going to grab this one. Now, when we look at the different risks as we get involved in them, you'll notice there's multiple different areas here. I have assessments, details, risk response tasks, issues that are open out there. Where am I going with these different risks as we're tying in it, tying across the board? Okay. So I have my draft state. That's where I was just simply putting in that information that you saw, which is going to be on the details, and we'll go back to that in a second. I have my assess. That's where I'm sending an assessment out. It needs to be scoring so I can get back a score on my risk from extended party. Now, depending on the type of risk, I need to determine who needs to answer those questions to give me my risk scoring. It's probably not me. It could be an outside party. It could be a security team, firewall team, whatever it may be. I need to send that risk assessment to make sure that I'm getting a good scoring back so we can track this properly. Okay. And then obviously I can do more monitoring. If I have risk events involved, I will cover those. You can see there is an assessment that's already been processed on this one. We did complete that out. And then I have multiple issues. So going back to the issues here again, just like we did with the risk, I can add a new one, or I can pull some in. So I can add them in. So any issues that are currently out there, maybe they pertain to my risk and other risks, I can pull those in if need be, or I can create a new one. So I'm going to grab a new one right now. Fill in some blanks here. We've got vendor policy. We're going to go to observation. This is a compliance. So I'm saying there's a vendor risk access policy that needs to be reviewed. Make sure we have the things in the right place. Well, that could be a high issue. So we're going to put a high priority on that. What's my issue rating? We're going to go with a high on that as well. What is my description? Maybe we need to review access policy with that. My assignment group. So I'm going to get it assigned to somebody. So I'm going to go with risk managers because I know that team. There's this guy Mark in there, so we'll assign it to him. And an issue manager. So there's two different things here. There's going to be somebody that manages the issues, and then there's somebody it might be assigned to. Again, I said this issues can go out to outside groups outside of IRM. Obviously, there's licensing things involved there, but depending on who that is, but I need somebody to control it. So that would be my issue manager watching out what's going on there. And then I want to put a due date, right? And we're just filling in some basics here as we go through. Otherwise, I could spend days on issues as we go through it, and we don't want to do that. So just some basics in here. Creating this new issue, we're going to go ahead and save that. Now, when I first went in there, you just saw some basic fill in the blank stuff. Once I saved it, now you can actually see the issue workflow that it ties into. Very similar to the project workflow we looked at and the risk workflow, but I'm going to analyze it. I'm going to respond to it, review if need be, and then close it out as we get there. Because obviously we want issues to close out over time. Otherwise, the risk is not going to get mitigated or accepted because we need to take care of these issues. Okay. I have my work notes and comments that I can fill out on here. I can dive into some more detailed tabs. This is where I put that general information. Obviously, I can dive down, put some more specific information. But if we look over here, I'm going to pull in some other things. I can add in different other risks to it. I can add in different entities. I can assign policies to it. Because maybe, what did I say before? This was definitely something we wanted to look at as far as a policy. I'm going to add that policy in. Because we were talking about access issues. So I'm going to grab this one. Okay. And then if need be, maybe I need to add some controls on here. Maybe something with staffing. All right, so you can see all these parts are part of the IRM area. When I get into policies and compliance controls, all these things have moved over. So easily we move from project into the IRM space and down to issue management. All right. I can also put child issues to it, and then any also remediation tasks if necessary. I'm gonna go ahead and save that. We can go back to that parent risk. Okay. Now, right back to my risk. I saw my assessments. I see my new issues here, so we can take care of that. Next thing we're going to move into is looking at how does that get me to opportunity management. So I'm glad you all asked. We're going to move on to that question. When we look at these different risks here, and so I'm going to jump over to risk. Bear with me a second. I didn't want to show up. One thing we need to do is make sure that we have a risk that has been responded to. Okay. If it's not responded to already, we cannot put it into opportunity management. So we're going to go ahead and do an assessment. We're going to assess this risk. Okay. Refresh the screen. It should give me a nice assessment to take. We're going to come in here. Now, this is a typical assessment that goes out, obviously configurable, and you can have multiple types of assessments. Maybe I need some particular to infrastructure, I need some financial, depending on whatever the risk is. But we're going to go ahead. I'm going to treat it like I was in high school, do a little Christmas tree here. We'll do some high stuff. But this is where we get that scoring from. We want the folks to give us answers back on what we need to know. Is it something that's happening rapidly, once a year, once less than every 20 years? Obviously, that's a low risk. So we're going to go ahead and submit that. Okay. Once that's submitted, reload this form. Now you can see we moved to that respond phase, and you'll see this create opportunity button showed up over here. Because once I go through this and say, okay, this looks really good, I think we're covering everything, I'm going to put some response on this. We're going to go to a mitigate. Remember, we want to make sure we tackle this risk. Even though we see the opportunity already, we still need to close these things out. So I'm going to have a response. Let me go ahead and save that. We know how the system doesn't like it when we don't save. And now I'm going to go ahead and create an opportunity. Okay. Where is that taking me now? It's taking me right into this opportunity management where we're going to start building that out. Okay. Now, when we look at that, what does that flow look like? I'm going to have a draft. That's that form we just jumped to, where I'm going to initiate so I can set up my plan. I may need to reevaluate it or defer it. Defer, I'll be putting it into like a backlog. I'm going to request approval if we think it's a good idea. We want to move it forward and pursue this action. Based on that approval, whoever the approving party is, that group is going to evaluate it. They're going to review it with the team submitting it or other approvers, and then they're going to make their decision. Based on that, if I approve it, it's actually going to create a new project, or if I reject it, then we would close out that opportunity. Okay. Now, as I go through the opportunity, you're going to notice some things. This actually directly from the DoD RIO document of what sort of information do we need to gather. And I'm sure this is a small subset of some of that information. This gives you an idea of if I'm looking at 3 different opportunities, what's my likelihood and so forth. This is sort of what we're going to step through. Okay, so if I come back over here, you're going to see on my opportunity. We're going to put some information in here. We're going to look at schedule reduction. We're going to say it's moderate. One there. Okay. The cost of implementation, you saw that on that spreadsheet as well. I need to have some costing in here. What's my program priority? We're going to give this a 2. Expected date, we're always a few months out, September 1st. What is my description of this opportunity? Because obviously the more information we give, the likelihood of approval, the better, right? So what are my objectives? And then what is my management strategy when I look at this? Okay, so summarize the mitigation plan, summarize mitigation plan. That's what I'm going to need to do back on that risk and see what we need to do there. Okay. Now, this is just in the draft phase. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and initiate it, just like I did on that slide there a second ago. And you're going to see now I'm actually bringing up my financials. What do I need to do here? Maybe R&D is going to be 25,000. O&M is going to be 375. Okay. We're going to do a 3-month margin on this thing for the schedule. What's our performance, right? Is it a 4% greater lift? Possibly. Okay. So we want to get that information in here. We're going to save that. And that's the information that's going to be driving this opportunity for that evaluation. So I have activities. Obviously, I can put in additional comments, more work notes. And then down here, you'll notice there's 3 related links. I have issues, related projects, and approvals. So what we're going to do is look at that issue. Just like off the risk, I can create new issues coming across because I saw this opportunity. But guess what? I think it needs some more information. So we're going to go to those risk managers. And Mark's going to get assigned. Mark gets assigned a lot of work. We're going to do this under observation because we mentioned that before when we were looking at the risk. Compliance isn't meeting what we need. Again, I need that issue manager because somebody has to be responsible for it. And even though I've moved this to an opportunity, that same issue sort of raises its ugly head, right? That vendor access. What's going on there? I have my issue rating, right? Again, I can add in different policies if I need to. So let's see, we're going to look at the operating access policy. And we need to track some of these different things. Now, obviously, you can have multiple issues or one issue, but we need to keep that going. Okay. Now, I'm back on my opportunity. You'll see I'm in initiate phase. From here, I can do a reevaluate. That's where I'm just, hey, syncing it up with my team. I'm going to put a status on that. Or I defer it. Hey, we're sticking it in a backlog if we need be. Or I can request approval. Now, we're going to go ahead and request approval because we like it. We're going to move it forward. And we need somebody to approve this for us. So you can see down here, here's my approving team. Mark's going to come in here and he's going to get a notification saying, hey, you have an opportunity to request that's been requested. You can approve it or deny it. Mark's going to see the pertinent information and then he can add his comments and make a decision. So I'm going to approve it because we want to move forward. And what happens is when I approve it, it's going to come back here. We're going to reload real quick. There's my approval. It's moved through the process. And now this team, this opportunity management team sees that they've been approved and they can pursue this opportunity. Doesn't mean we're going to pursue it today. Maybe we need a budget. Maybe it's in 6 months, but this one's been approved to move forward. And so at this point, we're going to go ahead and pursue now. Okay. What's going to happen then is it's actually going to create a new project. Load this, and I come back to these related links that were all blank before. So I have my issues, I have my approvers that went in there, and I have my new project that has now been created off of this opportunity. Okay, so now this is in motion. It's going to go to the PMO team to start moving forward. Right. So what does that mean? Where do we go from here is probably the big question, right? Well, here's my opportunity management dashboard, so I can see what's going on. I have my total opportunities. I can see where they're tied to, if they came from risks or other opportunities, because an opportunity can come from another opportunity. Any risk events. So this can be populated from anywhere. Available opportunities. Obviously, I can sort these by the state, whether they've been approved, deferred, or they're still in draft or moved forward. Some rejected. And then the projects that have been created recently from different opportunities that have moved forward. Okay. Obviously, I can see different states. Where are they at? That's why only 1 rejected and 11 we're pursuing, because we definitely want to clean up our act and get things moving forward. Okay. So when we look at that, now we're going to look at tying that back. So when we looked at all those risks and we moved through opportunities, what does it tie back to? Well, it's tying back to some different financials. So we can look at, hey, here's my gross losses, my net losses, what's going on. I have events in different states. I can analyze those. This is all real-time information. So no matter where you work in the system, you're putting in your risks, you're putting in your events based on those projects. I'm gathering real-time data across the board. Okay. When we look at that, I'm tying it right back to the projects. Okay. I'm back in the project risk overview here. And you'll notice this heat map. This is based off of those risk assessments. That one little assessment I did, those risk assessments come back here to the projects and give me scoring based on my different projects. So I have 3 right here with major impact, unlikely likelihood here with a major impact. For my residual risk, again, some moderate and unlikely, but these are from those risk assessments that we did. Okay, so I'm tying it all the way back to project, no matter what part of the system we're in. Okay, so what did that do? I'm going to tie back here. That brought us full circle back to that strategic portfolio management. So everything we did at the beginning, we built that project. We built out our risks. That information is flowing back into those heat maps. It's giving me my scoring. Any issues are being tracked off of that. We saw opportunity, so we created an opportunity from that. We're tracking some issues there. We get those resolved. And then we went through an approval process to say, yes, we want to tackle this and go into a new project. Okay. So here, let me dump over here. And I'm going to go back to the beginning and show you, this is that brand new project that we created right from that last opportunity. So I started here and we ended here. So everything is tied through in a circular fashion. Any questions? I was not talking to myself the whole time.
No, that was great. Thank you.
Okay.
Good questions in the chat.
All right.
Yeah. So one thing, this is Andy, the one thing I wanted to just reiterate, and Mark, thank you. As you can see, it gets we have a very powerful solution for SPM, right? It's dense. Our IRM solution also dense with advanced risk. There's so many different ways we can go, so it's so flexible. So what Mark really showed was that idea of once all those risks are put in, and he showed you how to get the risks in there, and once they become opportunities, how they then tie back to the strategic SPM, which is the requirement of RIO, is that from that project management phase, while we're doing project management, while we're in that project management record, we can see in real time all the risks. We can do those heat maps. We can see the dashboards to be able to assist, to go over the risks and to either solve them or close them out, or work through them as the project management continues on. So again, it ties into all of these solutions tie back together into one record that we can then track to meet the requirements of RIO.
Exactly, indeed. And just one more point. When you look, this workflow that I'm sharing right now is simplistic compared to what we actually walked through. If you were looking at some of those screens, and I can obviously stand back to them, the issues, we were tying back to controls, we were tying back to audits, we could tie it back to policies. It was very intertwined. The IRM area is like a spider web because you can cross all the different boundaries with it. You're not in a linear process flow, even though we sort of stepped through one today, but I can jump from one area to the other. And what we've done here is we've tied the SPM into that, right? So now SPM has now become part of that web between the two areas. And you saw that from those heat maps, how I'm tying that information from IRM. We're getting true risk management on project risks. Where in the past you would have a project risk, it would sort of stay in project, and then the project would wrap up and we'd say, yeah, we have these risks through it and we're just going to categorize them at the end of the day. And you really didn't have risk management during the project as it was happening. What we've done here is now you're getting true risk management as you walk through and tie those. So as the project's going on, you can be mitigating those risks. You can be creating opportunities from them for the next project. So at the end of the project, you're saying, hey, yeah, we had a couple risks, but guess what? We worked through them. They got all worked out during it, and we have some new opportunities off of it. So we've really pulled SPM into the IRM web of different applications, policy, compliance, audit, risk, issues. All that stuff is now tied together.
We do hope the information you received during this webinar has been helpful. If you have any further questions that come up later or would like to request any more information, please feel free to reach out. As mentioned at the beginning, the recording will be emailed out to all of the emails you guys used to register with. So thank you guys again.